voice. Wow. Hi, Jon. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
it's Nancy, right? Nancy.
Yeah.
And from Oregon?
Portland, Oregon. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And Soren, thank you so much for soliciting Jon to create this amazing offering. I'm just kind of blown away.
We concocted this together. He didn't solicit me. Just
okay, it sounds good. Sounds reasonable. I teach MBSR in Portland, and one of the questions that I have for you in the training of MBSR teachers, there's been a growing sensitivity to trauma-sensitive guidance in guiding practice. And you've touched on that in certain ways, implicitly, but I'm curious if you might talk about that more explicitly. And I think about, you know, there are thousands and thousands of people that are watching these videos, and many of them may be meditating for the first time or very early on and really stuck in, I'm not doing it right. I'm not going to get this. I can't do this because the breath or the body doesn't feel like a safe place.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear your.
Well, thank you for asking that. And I'm very aware of that. So I don't know if you've heard it, but I'm not just focusing on the breath and the body, but on a whole range of different kinds of potential for experience. I welcome the kind of orientation that David Treleaven has given us in terms of sensitivity to people who have had really horrific traumatic experiences, who might be more sensitive to how things are framed in terms of objects of attention, or the whole notion of just looking inwardly when one has experienced nightmares of unbelievable proportions in lots of different ways, and many, many people have. Especially in the trauma realm, of course, and probably all of you know this to one degree or another, they often talk about big T trauma, which are stuff that you want to have happen to you, but happens to lots and lots, millions of people. And we're in a position where, I mean, this COVID-19 is creating traumas beyond belief of all sorts of kinds, including economic, social, justice traumas, everything, and illness and death. And then there's what's called little t traumas, which are like, you know, just being born, just having parents, whoever they are, just having being bullied once, or whatever your experience of it is. It's very hard to get to adulthood without having untoward experiences. And I'm not going to go into this in very great detail because I'm going to do it online for a whole bunch of MBSR teachers relatively soon. And you could probably find that through Anne Tuick in Ireland, who is organizing this thing. But there's also, it's very important, I would say, to not actually privilege trauma and put it someplace where you then approach people as if they might be so sensitive that you have to bend over backwards to not be real yourself, and then thread certain kinds of needles because you're afraid of what would happen if you did trigger some kind of reactivity. And my particular view is like, an MBSR teacher has to be ready for anything, trust in your own good nature and good intentions in even potentially triggering some kind of intense trauma reaction, and then be ready to handle that. And I think you're in much better stead if you do that as a kind of foundation for the trauma sensitive MBSR that people are beginning to learn and incorporate. But if you just do it from that kind of a framework, that's actually undermines this non-dual, open-hearted, put out the welcome mat for absolutely everything, including severe trauma.
And that's actually been my experience as I've kind of leaned into David Treleaven's work and some other training opportunities, that whole piece came really alive for me, that's already been here for the time that I've been teaching. I've been meeting this without this specific guidance.
Well,
And
good for you. I'm glad to hear that
yeah,
because,
and
yeah,
so
it's
I find,
fundamental.
and I find as a teacher to step back and rely on that sense and that knowing, just to meet someone that doesn't put them in a box or a place.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, that said, how would you, or what guidance would you offer people here that are doing this very early on, and the breath doesn't feel safe or the body doesn't feel safe? And as you mentioned, you have talked about a lot of other different foci of attention, but I'm curious, if you were to speak directly to people that are feeling that way, what might you say to them?
This is too theoretical for me at this particular moment. If someone were to actually, arise on the screen, and then I would go through that with them. But I don't really want to visit this as a theoretical, because in some sense, this empowers all of us to get into that headspace around sort of clinical approaches to particular kinds of things. When the real power of MBSR is to welcome every single person into the room, no matter what they're carrying, which is the root meaning of the word to suffer. And everybody who comes to MBSR is suffering in one way or another. That's like the magnet, a dukkha magnet, drawing people who are suffering. And I don't want to turn MBSR into a caricature of itself by scripting out how you would approach this particular clinical picture, that particular, because as soon as you do that, you, the MBSR teacher, are in your head doing some kind of analytical calculation around how not to trigger something in the other person, and you actually dehumanize them in the process of doing that. So, I think that this is something where every single person has to find their own comfort level in how to recognize the profound generosity of this practice, which sometimes looks really, really tough. Okay. And in some traditions, they emphasize that kind of toughness a lot more than softness. But my feeling is attached to toughness, attached to softness, dualistic. Okay, just what we were talking about before. So non-attachment is the only way to go, and that means non-attachment to your cognitive ideas about other people's trauma. And that doesn't mean that you can't learn as much as you can about the nature of trauma, especially if you have been blessed not to have that much of it yourself. And then trust in your own heart rather than some curriculum that anybody wrote, whether it's me or David or anybody else.
Yeah.
That's kind of the spirit of MBSR, and it's been that way from day one.
Yeah, and that's really where I've landed with this, realizing that the more that I was getting pulled into studying and analyzing this, the more it felt like I was compromising how I was meeting the moment with participants.
Well, see, that makes me smile and is music to my ears, because it's confirmation that it's the right way to go to trust yourself and to trust in emergence of whatever arises in the present moment, and not script it in advance, but to study and exercise the muscle of heartfulness. Mindfulness and heartfulness, the same thing. Okay, so compassion, clarity, hearing often pain, even if the pain is hidden, sensing it, and then approaching it intuitively in ways that honor the, let's say, Buddha nature of every single person in your class, including your own.
Right.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, MBSR completely changed my life and my practice, and I can't thank you enough for being able to put this into a way that it can be brought to the world. It's just nothing short of
Well,
brilliance.
that's
And
very kind of you to say. And there's no way to pay me back if you think that there's some debt incurred here. But the
no.
only way is to pay it forward. Okay. And that's really what we're all doing anyway.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess.